If there are wolves among them, should we not set them free?
Now I had new questions. Ones that were much harder to answer.
What's up, everybody? This is Stormtrooper from over at GamingTreehouse.com with our review of For Honor. So if you're watching this, man, do I got some stuff to tell you. You know, as a child, I always grew up fantasizing about massive battles with knights or Vikings. Heck, I even did that with samurais. So when I first saw For Honor back at the Ubisoft E3 conference, it felt like my dreams were finally coming true. I mean, Ubisoft Montreal was crafting a game that I used to imagine as a child when I was playing with my action figures growing up. For Honor is an action fighting game set during a medieval period inspired by a fantasy setting. When you first start the game up, you're prompted with choosing a different faction that you'd like to represent. They have 3 different factions within For Honor. They are the Legion, the Chosen, and the Warborn. The 3 factions represent knights, samurai, and Vikings, respectively. You then get to create an emblem representing your hero, and then are greeted with a tutorial. Not necessarily with what you chose, but just a tutorial to introduce you to the world. So, you can't skip this tutorial, so remember that, guys. Now let's jump into the campaign. Well, the campaign is similar to how Battlefield 1 approached their campaign last year, with allowing the player to play separate stories, which worked really well for Battlefield 1. However, it just it doesn't have the same charm in For Honor. So, the first story and campaign that you're greeted with is the Knight, no matter what faction you chose to align yourself when starting the game. Which kind of sucks, because you start with choosing a faction, you start with creating your emblem, and then you're greeted with playing who they want you to play. Which, it does turn out well, but it just kind of sucks at first whenever you first jump into the campaign. So, like I said, the first few missions started out bland and was basically reteaching you the tutorial, even though you couldn't start the actual game without playing the tutorial mission already. Which is one negative point that I have with this game. But the campaign does pick up the pace and allows you to play through as the different classes of each of the factions, which really begins to make things really interesting. Each class feels different from the last, and you're always learning new moves, which is great to learn before tackling the multiplayer, because you will get pummeled if you don't. There are also different types of gameplay options in the campaign. It's not just the typical fights that you see. When it comes to the bosses of the mission, there are different gameplay styles to tackle. One mission, I had to chase down this boss on an epic horse ride while fighting off enemies, while another I was having to dodge dogs attacking me while I tried to fight the boss. This variation in gameplay felt refreshing and kept the missions from feeling like the same mission over and over and over again. Believe it or not, there is an actual and exciting story to the campaign that continues on throughout the different faction campaigns that will evoke some kind of feelings of heroism or a deplorable nature, just depending on which side you're seeing the story play out from. The transitions between the factions also feel very natural when it comes to the story, as it picks up where you left off from, say, like I started with the Knight faction and now I'm in the Viking faction. What ended on the Knight faction, you pick it straight up in the Viking faction, the same with the Samurais. Now, in the campaign, you can level up your hero and unlock new feats that basically give you an advantage on the battlefield within the campaign, which is great when you start getting some of the harder missions or go back and replay on a harder level. So, you can also unlock items for your multiplayer hero by playing through the campaign, which is really gives you an incentive to play the campaign if you're just buying this for the multiplayer. So, let's get to the bread and butter of For Honor, and that is the multiplayer. The multiplayer For Honor features 5 different game modes: Dominion, which is 4v4, Elimination, which is 4v4, Team Deathmatch, which is 4v4, Brawls, which is 2v2, and Duels, which is 1v1. In Dominion, you score points through killing enemies, capturing specific areas, and controlling them over time. Dominion feels like this epic scaled war battle that is kind of featured in the campaign, and it just provides a great sized map to explore and have your own separate little battles within against other players or enemy AI. And while other such modes as Brawl or Duels feel a lot more personal when it comes to fighting your enemy, just the variety of modes create for different kinds of fun depending on what you're looking for. And that is great. So if you don't like the whole big battles of the campaign, but you just kind of like the boss missions, I would suggest sticking to like the Brawls and the Duels because it feels a lot more personal and a lot more satisfying when you get that kill. The customization options in the multiplayer are endless. When it comes to customizing your hero in the multiplayer section, there are different colors, equipment, symbols, little figures put on your head, whatever to purchase or unlock for your character to make your hero your own and stand out from the competition. Items can be unlocked by playing the campaign, looted from the battlefield at the end of a multiplayer match, or by buying it with gold earned from playing by buying it like with a scavenger pack or whatnot. It'll unlock different stuff depending on which tier scavenger pack you buy. So when you're not customizing your character, the environments is definitely a dangerous and exciting place to check out. The environments within For Honor is a beautiful but dangerous sight to see. As soon as a match starts, I am constantly looking on how to use the environment to my advantage. I've pushed enemy players off bridges, cliffs, and into spikes, fires, and even into a hot geyser, with each kill being as satisfying as the last. Depending on who currently owns the territory or the map, it will vary on if you see more samurai, knight, or Vikings items later on the map. And the map area does change from day to day on which maps are playable, just depending on which faction is controlling the most territory. But the environments may be beautiful, but when you're having connection issues to the For Honor multiplayer servers, that's where I begin to have a problem. The actual online functionality is a major issue with this game. Instead of Ubisoft choosing to host dedicated servers for their big fighting multiplayer game, they chose to instead go with this model. Quote from Ubisoft: For Honor has its own network model that is different from game servers or traditional player-to-player where one of the players is elected as the game server or the host. We don't have a game host per se, as the session host only manages the invites and handshakes of all players in that session. This is why the game can be impacted by leaving session host, pausing the match for a brief moment until a new session host is elected, and the game is synchronized and the match resumes. On paper, that sounds like a great idea, but this is where the biggest issue of the game lies. The system fails to elect a new session host and instead ends the session, which prompts an error code to the user. This happens time and time and time again, because of players that are losing will rage quit the game, and the proper handshake doesn't happen between shifting the session host to the player that remains. I mean, this could be fixed in a later patch, but at launch, this is how I currently played it. Half of the games that I were in ended in network connection issues, while the other half ran just fine, just depending on who the host was. But despite its online functionality flaws, For Honor's multiplayer is still a strong force to be reckoned with, and the single player is on an epic scale. The in-depth customization of your hero, along with the deep fighting mechanics, leaves a lot to unlock and learn for months to come. This is my review, Stormtrooper from Gaming Treehouse. I rate For Honor an 8 out of 10, with the pros being exciting multiplayer, endless customization options, in-depth fighting mechanics, and epic single-player missions, while the cons are online functionality, and you can't disable the tutorials that are the beginning of the campaign even though you just played a tutorial mission. So, sound off in the comments below, let me know which faction you're representing. You can send me an invite, Stormtrooper on Xbox, and I'll play with you. I will duel you. I will kill you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Until next time, keep gaming. See y'all later.